Hello, you cocksucking bitch fucks. Welcome back to another video. Today, I wanted to talk about the afterlife. I've been thinking a lot about it and more about why it doesn't really make sense to me. So yeah, that's the kind of video you're gonna get. If you're religious and whatnot, feel free to, I don't know, correct some things that you believe are errors in my way of thought as somebody that's a non-religious person. But I don't know, I wanted to bring something that I've never really heard anyone say before. Maybe someone has, I don't know, I just haven't seen anyone say it, but like the idea of an afterlife just doesn't make sense, I feel, on the basis of time and not to mention suicide. And I'll go by these one by one. I guess I'll just start with time. Now, what you typically hear about an afterlife, or more so what I've experienced through, let's say, I don't know, somebody Christian or somebody like Islamic or like whatever, you know, they have this like interpretation of like heaven and hell. And I feel like I don't even necessarily have to go to the like moral arguments about like all of that, because like I know the foundation is like, oh, you're a good person, you get sent to heaven. If you're bad, then like, okay, you burn in hell for like all of eternity. Because okay, regardless of like what those standards are to you and what qualifies there, yeah, that can be a separate discussion and all that stuff. But like, okay, I'm just gonna, for like, you know, the sake of argument, like let's say, okay, I'll, like just to assume, or I'm just gonna go off like, you know, the afterlife is real, even though I don't really believe in it. I see no good reason to believe in it, but like, okay, even if it is, I feel like its foundation is still faulty, because not even just asking people to prove that, like, okay, where's this, like, I don't know, what I would think is a better explanation to like prove that heaven's a real thing or like hell's a real thing, and like not just word of mouth, like people saying, oh, I saw a glimpse, I had like a near-death experience. I'm just like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with that? Like, I can't confirm an experience that supposedly only you went through. So like, it's not gonna sway me. Like, it doesn't matter if like, it's not even about like trust or not. Cause like, I know some people are gonna be like, oh, why would I lie about that? Why would I feel the need to lie about it? Like, it's not even that. It's like, I find it hard to believe if I'm not also able to like confirm it, I guess, from like my own point of view, and like not just like hearing it, you know, from you. Because like, for example, I don't know, I'll just use a simple example. Like, if you told me that like 2 + 2 = 4, I would agree with you. And I know to agree with you not just on the basis that you're telling me it's 4. I can do the math myself and like, oh yeah, that adds up. I see how you got there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not just you telling me that, yeah, it's this, therefore you should just believe me. Like, yeah, I don't know. It just, yeah, it doesn't like, it doesn't do enough for me to like, for you to just say, oh, there have been so many people saying that they saw, I don't know, heaven or hell or something, or they came back from like heaven and yeah, now they know that there's a God, or like they saw a glimpse of hell and knew that they needed to like change their ways and whatnot. It's just, I don't know, still just sounds pretty baseless to me. Like, all that is a simple he said, she said, and the he said, she said could be applied to any narrative that you want, even things that, let's say, you as a religious person, spiritual person, whatever you want to call it, like believer of some sort of like realm outside of like what we interpret as this reality. Yeah, I'm sure it could also be applied to something like that, something that you find absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, just getting that out of the way, I guess. But like, okay, back to what I think, okay, like the concept of time. Because when you think about it, time's not even a real thing. It just exists in our mind. Like, numbers technically aren't real. Like, we as people need it to place structure in our lives. You know what I mean? And the reason why I want to mention time is because typically you'll hear from these people that like, oh, if you do well enough and you'll be in God's presence in the kingdom of heaven for like all of, you know, eternity. Keep that in mind, eternity. And also, you know, oh, if you do all these things considered like terrible within our religion, you're gonna burn in hell for an eternity, yada yada yada, all that stuff. It follows this narrative of eternity, which doesn't even make sense when you think about it. Because, okay, one argument that I'll often hear from like a lot of religious people, Christians, Muslims, and the like, is that they corner an atheist to say, okay, did the universe have a beginning or did it always exist? Now, I'm not gonna strive too heavily on that because I'm trying to focus this back on why I don't think the afterlife is a believable enough concept. But the only reason I'm mentioning that is because like I see a cognitive dissonance there, because I think they know what I'm talking about. So why don't they put that same perspective towards like the afterlife? Because let's say if you do believe that the universe has always like infinitely existed, then they're gonna ask for like, okay, some like evidence that essentially you can't give, because essentially the whole like house of cards, I believe, like this whole afterlife thing falls upon, yes, is this concept of eternity, because we can't even fully interpret what that is, even in the sense of like, okay, because like I can say that numbers technically are not even real. Like like what I said again, like time and the like, we use it to place a structure onto something. So we can say, oh, 17 is bigger than 18, that kind of stuff. But when you're talking about like infinity, what are you even saying specifically? Because for example, in the sense of like, okay, us craving structure, there's a start and a beginning to something. And the concept of infinity, for like if you like take it into consideration, has no beginning and no end. So to think that you're gonna tell somebody that they're gonna either like even if it's happiness, let's just say in like heaven or like hell, is like something that by default you actually can't prove in and of itself. Like even something more rare, like I would say like what I mean by that is like, okay, like even a lottery ticket, like earning the millions, the billions, whatever, has more of something credible to give than the foundation of how an afterlife is essentially constructed. Because, okay, even though numbers are like made up, our time on earth, we use it in a sense of like a beginning and an end. So this idea of like infinity, you're not technically giving someone a real number, even if yes, numbers technically aren't real because they're for our own convenience. And I keep talking about like our own convenience in the sense because like, okay, like math, numbers, technically they're also abstract concepts. Like if I see two rocks next to each other, I can identify that they're two rocks. But like in a way, I feel like that necessitates a perspective to see that there are two rocks. Like why the fuck do the two rocks care that they're two rocks? Like they're not even conceiving this idea that this rock and that rock next to each other, oh, we're two rocks that are together, we happen to be side by side. We need that for our convenience to like lay everything out. Oh, there are two rocks here, we have like 5 sets of whatever the fuck or something like that. It's for our convenience. So this idea of like something infinite technically can't even be carried out, and we have no perception of it. So if you have no perception of how something is actually supposed to be conceived, then even on a superficial basis, like it's not real. Like you're saying, oh, you're gonna be tortured for eternity, or oh, you're gonna be in heaven for like all of like eternity. Like okay, how are you gonna demonstrate that? Because like if you think it's absurd hypothetically if an atheist were to say that, oh, the universe always existed, and then like, okay, prove this like infinity, then why isn't the same thing placed towards like your afterlife, whether that's eternal bliss or like eternal torture in hell? Because it doesn't mean anything. And to even expand further upon that, it's like, okay, if you just take a number itself, what does it mean without any like like noted context or implied context, like, you know, placed upon it. Like, if I told you to give me 20, how are you going to interpret that? Like, what does that mean? Drop and give me 20? Like push-ups? What does that mean? Give me 20 bucks, some money? Like, you know, there has to be a thing that, you know, applies within why this number is being used. Because if I just tell you to like give me the number 8, like you can come up with like so many ambiguous interpretations. Like, what the fuck does that mean? Give me the number 8. Like, okay, here's 8 written on a piece of paper. Is that what you want? Or like 8 pieces of like whatever, I'm giving you 8 pencils. Does that count? Like, there's no context added to it. So every single time you think of like these things like numbers and all that stuff, you're placing a beginning and an end to it. So like, for example, even the threat I would believe to take more seriously is like, okay, would you rather be, I don't know, punched 8 times or like, I don't know, punched for like an eternity? And I know you might say, oh, if someone says they're gonna punch me for like an eternity and theoretically it's possible, they can just keep doing it. But like, okay, see, here's the thing. But flip it the other way around. Because even knowing that you're gonna get punched in the face 8 times, like that, okay, that has like a beginning and an end, and it's like something solid. So you know for sure that you'll only get hit like 8 times, let's just say. I'm sorry if I'm like fucking up what I'm trying to explain here. I have a lot of things that are, yeah. So I'm like, you know, I'm doing my best to like explain it. But like, okay, the fact that you can say, like, let's say like in the context of hell that like, okay, you'll be tortured for an eternity. So just as much as you can place torture, someone else can constantly ask the question, how is this really good eternal? For eternity. Because as much as you can do it, as much as one can still wonder, when can this hypothetically, you know, stop? Because like, in order to, I guess, attempt to prove infinity, you have to keep doing and doing and doing it. And at any moment, theoretically, that you stop, oh, it proves that eternity isn't real. So when you think of this concept of like eternity, you can neither prove nor disprove it if you like really think about it. Because the moment that it stops, oh, there's like an actual, you know, like amount here. Oh, this only lasted for blah, blah, blah. Oh, wait, so maybe it's not actually for an eternity. But if it has to keep going for like an eternity, it can just go on and on and on. So technically trying to quantify what infinity is will, you know, just keep like perpetuating for like as long as it goes. So if you think about it in a way, you're not actually saying anything towards it. Like eternity doesn't mean anything. Like even, okay, like when you play a fighting game, like let's say like Street Fighter or Tekken or like something like that, you can put a timer on, and even if like nobody gets knocked out, you know, you just win based on, oh, let's say if your character has like more health than like somebody else. But even the concept of infinity used in that game, because I remember, yeah, like if you play like Street Fighter or something like that, you know, there's like an infinite, like, you know, this is what infinite looks like literally just like an 8 taken this way. And all that means is that the time's unlimited in the sense that like, oh, you guys can fight each other until, oh, like somebody knocks away like, you know, all the health towards like their opponent. So technically it's not even infinity. Yeah, it was a concept. It was a concept given in our mind. So you can think about infinity. You can't exactly demonstrate what it is. So that just makes the threat of hell, when you think about it, or at least when I think about it, less frightening than like what it's actually supposed to be. And even the concept of heaven, which is supposed to be eternal joy with God, it just makes it look like a completely false hope. And another thing I wanted to mention, as for the afterlife like not really making sense, and I feel like I've never really heard anyone talk about this, is like the idea of suicide. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because I've spoken to some religious people here and there. And you know, you might get like the whole like pompous, arrogant ones. I'm not trying to generalize all of you as, you know, in that manner, but then like, you know, how they might scoff and be like, oh, you know there's a God deep down, or you're just trying to like run away because you're a sinner, blah blah, whatever, all that like kind of stuff. Or basically the point is when someone tries to be like, oh, deep down everybody knows that there's a God. And okay, and as follows, there's going to be an afterlife, a heaven or a hell, and we'll be judged accordingly, apparently. But like, if that's the case, then why is suicide still around? I don't know, are we just going to make the argument that someone depressed is stupid? I don't know, maybe that most likely is it. Because how I conceptualize suicide is somebody that just doesn't want to exist. Now, if you were to kill yourself and you just go to whatever, I don't know, God, the final ruler, let's say in this case, like decides whether you're worthy of like heaven or like hell, then it's like, what makes suicide pursuable for anybody? Like, if you know that there's a God deep down, then, and you're like, okay, and like if you're feeling suicidal, I'm going to imagine you must be like really super depressed or like something like that, then like you might as well just rot in your depression regardless of like where you are. And oh, not to mention, oh yeah, even suicide itself, as for like what might cause that, like depression makes it difficult for me to conceive that eternal punishment is even possible. Because like, even discarding all those things I said about how like the idea of infinity is like, you know, just that, an idea, or like numbers in general. But even in the same way that like we use numbers, like we can never demonstrate infinity, because we need the structure to indicate, okay, is there enough or is there too little? You know, yeah, all those like sorts of things. So, okay, what was I talking about? Okay, yeah, back to like depression and stuff. I mean, what I know of like human beings is that, okay, if you've gone through something really, really bad, or I don't know, if it's a chemical, whatever in your mind, like, okay, well, for whatever reason you might have, let's say like really, really bad, like depression that makes you feel suicidal, whether it's, you know, just your brain, a contribution to things that happened in your life, or like all those things mixed together, okay, whatever is your purview of someone that would have to go through in order to, I guess, like, you know, contemplate killing themselves. It just, okay, yeah, okay, I got it. Because what I've noticed is that, like, yeah, if you're like extremely depressed, and things that I'm not far from feeling either, is that you're just super numb. So in a way, because like I feel like stereotypically maybe people just associate depression as like, oh, being sad, or like colloquially, sorry if I'm pronouncing that weird, it's just like, yeah, another word to describe something that's like unpleasant. Oh, that was depressing. But like, nah, if we're actually imagining like depression in the sense of like its actual like mental disorder perspective, you know, like in terms of like, yeah, like not a colloquial like use of it, then in a way a lot of times it's not even just sadness. You can often associate like numbness with depression. So there's just like nothing there. And if hell is supposed to be eternal torture, and we know that here on earth a lot of humans are either going to kill themselves, or they'll just fall into their depression if they don't hypothetically kill themselves, then symbolically you can say they're already dead. Because like if somebody just, you know, rots in their bed all day, they don't want to get out, because like, you know, like not far from like depression is that, oh, you lose pleasure in the activities that like you once enjoyed, or you stop taking care of yourself, your hygiene might get super terrible, like, you know, this and this and that. So I can't fathom being tortured for an eternity, like when I actually think about it more, because it's just like so much pain just equals to, and it seems from like my experience and what I've noticed from like other people, is that so much pain essentially just equals out to no pain, numbness, depression, let's just say. And now somebody might say, oh, well, we don't know the workings of like something outside of like this earthly realm. But I'm just like, okay, then how am I not going to see that as just some sort of like projection? Like, how convenient is it for you to give me an explanation that you think makes sense when you think it makes sense, but when I tell you something, give you like an argument, this is just, again, what I've like, personally what I've gone through, or when I see a lot of like religious people try to like make their points, or like a lot of theistic people, because I've even met people that are like, oh, we don't believe in religion, we just have a relationship with God, so like whatever. I mean, whatever terminology just, you know, suits your fancy. Yeah, I'm just referring to you people, I guess, that like believe in God and this whole thing about like an afterlife and this and this and that. Yeah, so if you feel confident in making an argument, yeah, you'll do that. But if there's something you can't answer, then it's just like, oh, it's beyond our capability because, oh, we're just like mere humans and we're nothing like God or whatever the fuck your supernatural interpretation is that just like fixes everything in a nutshell. Because I'm just gonna be honest, what it looks like to me, you're too lazy to think, or you have a hard time admitting that perhaps you just don't fucking know. But yeah, it just doesn't really add up to me. And also, yeah, the whole like non-believer talking point that if you are religious, I'm sure you've already fucking heard, but whatever. It just sounds to me like it's some sort of cope, because humans can't deal with the fact that they're not gonna exist. Like, we interpret ourselves as interpreting this reality as, you know, our, you know, way of like life, and life, or the idea of us existing is interpreted as like, okay, yeah, us existing and like actually happening, quote unquote, whatever the fuck that even means. Because I don't know, you can just say that there are things happening. Who has the right perspective to say it? It's just, I don't know, you can even like reduce it down, I feel, to just like, what if all of this is just colors interacting with each other, or like shapes interacting with each other, like something simplistic like that. And then, I don't know, certain colors or certain shapes just think they're more of a big deal than like they actually are. So I know death makes a lot of people uncomfortable, and I'm not saying that like it's entirely unfounded, because when there are things that people don't know, yeah, it does make them feel uncomfortable, because they feel like they have a lack of security within themselves. They feel as though they're, you know, super unprepared for things, in which, yeah, a lot of cases, yeah, gives insecurity when you want to feel a sense of security. And I think a good way that societies tried to fix that, and no, it's not even a good way if you ask me, I just want to say, like, you know, an attempt, how about that? Well, I guess it is good for like some people, because yeah, if you're like a religious person, let's just say, I'm not, but I'm like, yeah, okay, if you are, then I guess it does make death look a little terrifying, a little less terrifying, I mean, to you, if you think that, oh, you followed this you know, Christian path on the way to God, or you followed this Islamic path on the way to God, so now this test on this earth was just, I don't know, for like a higher transcendence, that you'll be in a better state, I guess, in like fucking heaven or something. But to me, it just sounds like a cope. And I guess a lot of people do need that, because, I mean, it makes sense to me as to why a lot of like religious people, spiritual people, and like whatnot, who believe in like some sort of like higher power, don't really experience, let's say, too much existential dread. Because I guess, you know, you don't really have to question yourself if you just believe that there's something higher above you that's like pulling all the strings, and you just have to, I don't know, follow the orders. Like, yeah, it takes a lot of the pressure off. Maybe in the sense that like one person wouldn't want to like manage the government, let's say, like all by themselves. So yeah, it takes the pressure off of some person's dealing with this section, some person's dealing with that section, and like, so like, in a way, I feel like God is perhaps just being treated in the same way. Because, I don't know, there are things people simply can't understand. So just thinking that there's something out there that does understand, hypothetically, because, I don't know, supposedly they're responsible for it, and they're looking after you if you let them, then, it's all good. And speaking of like letting someone or something or whatever like do anything, oh yeah, I wanted to say that specifically in the context of hell, because a lot of times I'll also hear them say, oh, God doesn't send anyone to hell, like you send yourself to hell as like a sinner. But then like what I would have to simply like respond to that is like, okay, even like morality aside, then okay, well actually still a little bit about morality, like what if somebody just doesn't care? Because if you supposedly send yourself to hell, which doesn't even make sense, because if you can send yourself to something that you don't want to be subjected to, then I think it's just a logical contradiction there. Because sure, some people do, yeah, I get it, let's say increase their consequences to like certain negative actions of like, let's say even on earth, like you want to commit like certain crimes or like whatever. Yeah, consequences in the sense that like, okay, if you're exposed and doing all this, then someone will want to get you arrested, and whoever the fuck's dealing with that, and wherever the fuck you're from and live and where you live and all that. Yeah, I think you know what I'm trying to say. But like a lot of those people don't even want to get caught. Sure, I like admittedly they want to do those things that they're doing, but I'm sure a lot of them didn't even want to be caught. But it'll happen anyway if like, oh, we're gonna arrest you, blah blah blah, this and this and that. But I mean, just like, unless they willingly put themselves in jail, unless somebody says I willingly want to go to hell, then like, no, you can't send yourself to something that supposedly is by definition a place that no one would want to be in, if you have to convince other people that following this way of God will lead you to the better place that's heaven. Like, I can't simply make sense of that. Like, to me, it sounds like mental gymnastics at work there. But then again, I don't know, maybe this entire life is all just about like mental gymnastics and like mental masturbation. I don't actually know what that term means, mental masturbation, because I've heard people say it in a way that like, oh yeah, maybe you are somebody that just plays like mental gymnastics anyway. But I think like, I don't know, whatever we choose to believe as humans ideologically is just a security blanket that like makes us comfortable. I don't know, because the way I look at life is that you just distract yourself with something in the meantime until you have to do it again, because the only other alternative is committing suicide and like killing yourself. But then like in a way we're wired to manipulate ourselves into living, because if your survival instincts in better tact than let's say somebody that's like depressed and stuff, like I don't imagine you're gonna let yourself starve if you have access to food and you can do it. I mean, I don't know, unless you have like an eating disorder or something like that. But then like, okay, I see, but like that's what I mean. These things that are just like, implemented upon us, if like by coincidence, oh, I don't have blah 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 disorder, certain like mental health issues, so okay, I can get up every single day, I can brush my teeth, I can take a shower, I can do all of this because, oh, for whatever fucking reason, I got given the mind that was like, sufficient enough in helping me help myself take care of myself. Yeah. So, I don't know. I guess ultimately, life just feels like one big lie to me. In general. I mean, not even just like in context of like an afterlife and like people coping. I feel like, yeah, we're all just trying to cope. But like, I don't know, some copes, I guess, look like they make sense to me less than others. And like, I don't know, in a way, sometimes I think that if just just feeling nothing in a way is more pleasant than being fed, I don't know, a stupid lie. And yeah, I think it's a stupid lie. You can disagree with me if you want, whatever. But, I don't know. It's just absurd to me But then again, it doesn't take away how I believe this whole world is just absurd in general. Whatever your classification of true existence and experience are ought to be, it's these questions that are difficult to answer just seem like it's held by like some like made up place that people think is an afterlife that we're gonna, you know, live towards a better thing for, like you know, something happy in heaven, or like, okay. And since I'm just talking about like an afterlife, and I've, you know, compared and contrast why heaven and hell seem like they're both equally ridiculous to me, like even the idea of like a next life, like being reincarnated into, I don't know, either something, oh, you did bad things, so in your next life you're gonna be a fucking fly that has to escape a Venus flytrap, or oh, in your next life you were, or more like are gonna be just something happier, basically. And oh, and I feel the same way towards like all of those people that say they supposedly had like a next, well, not really a next, but like I guess like a previous life, and like they remember those things, and I'm just like, how am I supposed to confirm that? Like how am I supposed to confirm something that only you yourself, whether it's true or not, will only know if it's true or not, regardless of what you're gonna tell me, and regardless of like what I'm like willing to believe? Because even if I'm willing to believe that, admittedly, I would still have no way to justify it. Like, if I think you're a trustworthy person, trustable person, like it doesn't even matter. Like, I can believe you, but if you're asking me alone to substantiate the things that you told me to someone else, yeah, I'm not gonna have more than just saying, oh, they told me it and I trust them, and based on my experience, they seem to be someone that's like, you know, very reliable. So I just would not think. But it's like, yeah, like that's all it is, like some sort of like, oh, I have a good feeling about you, so just let me go off that. But I mean, like, who cares, right? I would say who cares, because like, you know, we all have our biases, our prejudice, our, you know, whatever. So like what even makes a trustworthy person? Like, there's multiple interpretations of that, and I know that not all personalities necessarily mesh together, or even if they thought they once did, oh, we're not friends anymore, oh, we're not dating anymore, oh, we got a divorce, yeah, you know, the whole fucking ordeal. So, yeah. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't know how anyone just believes in that. But then again, I don't know how anybody believes in anything, because at this point, at least once a day, yeah, I'm always telling myself, I only know that I know nothing. So existence is just a paradox in general, I guess. And if what you believe works for you, and what I believe, let's just say, like, works for me, at least I can unite us in the sense that, like, okay, we're just coping. And you can think that you're not, but if you ask me, you thinking that you're not coping just screams to me even more that you're in denial of coping than I am. Because, yeah, there's no certainty that you'll see the next day, but if you're functioning well enough, you'll do everything you can in the hopes that you do see the next day. So every single day, you're caught in the middle of a stupid paradox that doesn't even make sense, or it can make sense if you let it. But like, see, that's the whole point though, if you just let it, like nothing more, nothing less. How do we know nothing's more or like nothing's less? It ultimately just goes back to, it is what it is. But then when you start asking again, what is it? Then, yeah, the whole thing just collapses again. And that's why we have to have discussions and arguments about, oh, who knows the truth? And that's all it'll ever be, trying to prove who makes more sense than the other. And it only ends once we're fucking dead. So, you know, feel those seconds passing by closer and closer to your death, and goodbye as this video shall end, and so will you.